Hello friends, welcome. Friends, I don't know whether you have seen this article. This article came out in Financial Express on September 8. And this has a very interesting headline. It says BSNL's user may need a 5G phone to get access to 4G service. Now, you will need a 5G phone to get access to 4G services. Doesn't it look very strange? Because 4G service is synonymous to affordability. Because 5G is a new technology and therefore its devices will take time in the market to mature. Now, if you need a 5G phone to access 4G services, then what will happen? Even if the tariffs of BSNL is affordable, the device won't be affordable. Therefore, those price conscious users who want their devices to be affordable in order to access affordable BSNL's plan will not be able to do so because of this bottleneck of 5G phone. Now, why I am doing this video? I am doing this video with two purposes in mind, which I have already spoken many times in past, which people who are following me, viewers who are following me might already know. My point is very simple, that BSNL strategy of rolling out 4G is faulty. I have been saying this from the very beginning. The services which they are planning to roll out in the country is not going to be useful for the price conscious customers. They will need a high-end device, which is a 5G phone, to able to access 4G services which are not that empowering as 5G. And then the problem would be that as BSNL migrates to from 4G to 5G, there will be hiccups in their network. So the purpose of this video is to explain why you need a 5G phone to access BSNL's 4G service, and when BSNL migrates from 4G to 5G in near future, what kind of problems BSNL is going to face as they carry out the migration. Now, why I am talking about this migration? It is because it is mentioned in this article. It says that this is because BSNL using two spectrum band for launching 4G services, 2100 and 700. While 2100 is for 4G services, 700 megabit band is 5G band. The government has allocated BSNL 700 to BSNL for 4G service currently, which the operator can use for 5G once it is ready for that launch. So, the intent of BSNL is to launch 5G services in 700 MHz band as well. So let's go step by step. Let's first talk about the reason why BSNL will need a 5G device, a BSNL's user will need a 5G phone to get access to 4G services, which is already explained in this article, but for the sake of repetition, I would like to state it. What is not there in the article is regarding the migration plan. 700 MHz band currently is going to be used for 4G. How this is going to be migrated to 5G in near future, which is BSNL's plan, and what kind of problems BSNL is going to face when they cause this migration. So that's the second part which is not captured in this article. So let's first quickly finish the first part. The first part is pretty simple, which I have been saying in past also. 700 MHz band is not a 4G band. It is a 5G band. Why it is a 5G band? Because worldwide, all over the world, everybody is using 700. Every mobile operator is using 700 for rolling out 5G, right? Including India. 700 MHz in India is used by Reliance Jio for 5G, not for 4G. Okay. There may be some networks of 4G in the 700 MHz band which are getting dismantled and converted into 5G. What does it mean? It basically means that a handset provider will always bring a new handset in the 700 MHz band which natively supports 5G. Right? It will not try to bring a 4G only device in the 700 MHz band. Makes sense? Because why would you do so? Because there are no operators who are deploying 700 MHz in 700 MHz band 4G only network. They are all doing 5G. Now, why the operators generally bring two types of technology in the same spectrum band? Because of legacy. If there are networks which are being used for 4G, let's say in 700, so the device will not require to be changed. That is the reason why the 700 megahertz device, which has got capability to do 4G, capability to do 5G, may also support 4G. So let's assume that the 5G devices, 5G phone that BSNL is 5G phone which you are going to use to access BSNL 4G services in 700 megahertz band has a native capability to do 4G also, and that's how you will be able to access that. The problem is that these 5G phone prices are high. These are not affordable compared to those native 4G devices which are available in bands which are already mature. Which are those bands? The bands are 800 megahertz band and the 900 megahertz band. If you compare apples to apples as far as BSNL, as per BSNL 700 megahertz 4G bands are concerned, because these are sub gigahertz band with similar coverage. So 800 and 900 will have affordable handsets because these have been deployed since 2016 for 4G, and 700 is a new band which you are using, which is a 5G band for 4G, and therefore there are no native 4G devices in general will be available. All devices will have, in general, will have 5G support capability because of the reason which I have explained. So even if BSNL comes out with a tariff plan for 4G which is affordable, much less compared to their competitors which are peers, Reliance Jio, Bharti and Vodafone, your device price will be such that those affordable segment of Indian consumers will not be able to access those 4G, affordable 4G services. So in turn, what it basically means, BSNL's 5G, BSNL 4G services are going to be dependent on a 5G phone for access, which means they are primarily meant for high-end users who really don't bother much about 4G tariffs or their tariff prices in general, which is a contradiction. And that's the basic problem which I have been talking about since the beginning. If you look at my article here, and this article which I wrote long back, I wrote this article on 27 June 2023 when the revival plan for BSNL was announced. I said that BSNL's revival plan falling just short the finish line. In this article, I had mentioned this problem which is being discussed in the Financial Express article, where I say, let's look at the conclusion, because there is no point in going through the full article, which I am going to anyway provide a link in the description, where I am saying that now I'm sure that you will agree that to me the BSNL revival plan stops just the finish line. It is in the interest of the country and the consumer that BSNL is able to complete this race and not turn back and face least incomplete. That too, and it says that so it's a Indian customer deserve the best, no less than two. When a huge quantum of spectrum in 800 megahertz in lying waste, why not put it for good use in the larger interest of the country? What do you think, right? So I don't want to go into the details of the article, but the conclusion you probably might understand. Now let's go into the spectrum plan to understand two things. Why 800 megahertz band was the best band for BSNL, and why the government of India committed a mistake by giving 700 megahertz band when 800 megahertz band was available, and what kind of problems the Indian consumer in BSNL will face when they start their migration plan from 700 megahertz 4G to 700 megahertz 5G. Let's focus on that part of the discussion. So if you look at this, many of you might have already seen my application, which is a web-based application which I created. This is a layout of 1800 megahertz band. Now in the drop-down menu, I can basically look at the band plan of 800 megahertz band. Now if you look at the band plan of 800 megahertz band, you see this red RGO, these are violet RCOM, and these which are pink, which are spectrum, which are line free. So what I am going to do is I am going to overlay the vacant spots along with the RCOM spots and the MTS spots. I think let's do RCOM. Now if you look at the RCOM spots which are currently basically lying empty, free because of the bankruptcy issue, and the vacant spot, if you see, you'll find that most circles you have more than 5 megahertz in 800 megahertz band. And if BSNL was given these, even one slot of 5 megahertz, then BSNL could have leveraged what? The RGOs, Reliance Jio's affordable 4G ecosystem of devices, which they are not able to do right now. Now let's go straight to the 700 megahertz band. Now 700 megahertz band, if you look at the 700 megahertz band plan, you will notice two things. One is that BSNL is sitting here. 5 megahertz of spectrum is available. RGO is sitting here and they are having how much? 10 megahertz of spectrum. BSNL is also having 10 megahertz of spectrum. And rest of the spectrum is occupied. This is railways, 10 megahertz spectrum, and this is defense, 10 megahertz of spectrum. 5 megahertz is probably going to be given to railways. That's what I understand. So there is no growth path here. So BSNL is going to be restricted to only 10 megahertz, just like RGO. There is no other plan for any further growth in this particular spectrum band. Now, how do BSNL is going to migrate its 4G network to 5G? So let's understand that, and that is going to be very, very crucial. So what they will do? So they have, how many spectrum bands they have? Let's look at that. BSNL has 700 megahertz band. BSNL has spectrum in 900 megahertz band. They don't have in 800, as I told you. So let's look at BSNL spectrum in 900 megahertz band. Where is BSNL? BSNLU. Yeah, this is there. So you will find that BSNL spectrum, this is a GSM. So they will not abandon their GSM network. They will continue. So this spectrum band is going to be useless. 1800 they have nothing. 2100 is already going to be used for 4G. So let's look at BSNL's 2100 megahertz spectrum band. So this is going to remain occupied by 4G. No problems with that. This is high frequency band, doesn't have coverage. Now there is one more band BSNL has as far as 4G is concerned, which is 2500 megahertz band. This is also going to be, this is, by the way, this spectrum plan has changed because this gap has now been reduced and these are being bought close to each other. So forget about that, just look at this particular plan. And if you look at BSNL here, you will find that BSNL has some spectrum in this particular band. Now this band is not going to be much useful because this is a high frequency band. 2100 is also going to be high frequency band, and then you have got the 700 megahertz band. So let's assume that BSNL has deployed 4G in 700 and in 2100 megahertz band because there is no other band available for BSNL. Now let's assume that BSNL causes a migration from 700 to 4G to 700 5G. Let's look at that scenario. Now what will happen is, as the migration is caused from 700 megahertz to 4G to 700 megahertz 5G, what will happen is that those 4G customers who doesn't want 5G, or maybe tomorrow if there are standalone without 5G capability 4G handsets are available in the market. I am assuming that scenario. Let's assume that there are plain vanilla handset available in the market which doesn't have 5G capability, and BSNL somehow is able to unlock that potential in the market by the government pushing the handset manufacturers to come out with a device which is standalone 4G which doesn't have 5G capability. Let's assume that scenario comes through. In that scenario, what will happen is that those customers who has the capability to do both 4G and 5G, they will be able to sustain BSNL's transition from 700 megahertz band to 700 megahertz band 4G to 5G in the 700 megahertz band. Why? Because as you cause the transition, what you will do, you will remove these BTSs, 4G BTSs, or you will do a software upgrade in the 4G BTS to convert them to 5G. Now, as soon as you convert these BTSs, which is sitting in the 700 megahertz band, to 5G, those plain vanilla 4G handset without 5G capability will suddenly get knocked out of the network, and they will get latched on to which frequency band? The 2100 megahertz frequency band, because they have no other option, because there is no other frequency band which is available for them to support 4G plain vanilla 4G services, because their handset doesn't have the capability to do 5G. If you assume that there are handsets going to be available in the market which will do only 4G, not 5G in the 700 megahertz band, so those users who doesn't have those handset will go and latch onto the 2100 megahertz spectrum, and the 2100 megahertz spectrum coverage is going to be much smaller than the coverage of the 700 megahertz 4G plus 5G. Now this now has become 5G. Let me do a different color. So this is the 700 megahertz coverage. This has now become 5G. Now what will happen? You are sitting here. Suddenly you basically have a 4G device, and your 4G devices are going to be knocked off from the 700 megahertz band, and you will latch onto the 2100 megahertz band. Immediately at that particular point of time, your 4G coverage is going to shrink now. It is going to become equal to the 2100 megahertz band. So you will no longer like your 4G service, and you will face a loss of service immediately. That is the reason why the transition of BSNL from 4G to 5G is going to cause a lot of dissatisfaction to those users who are going to be using BSNL 700 megahertz band in a simple standalone only a 4G device, not with 5G capability. Right? That is the reason why this headline is very important, which says BSNL user may need a 5G phone to get an access to 4G services, because going forward, as this 700 megahertz 4G gets converted to 5G, only those users with a 5G phone will be able to access that service. And those plain vanilla 4G users are going to be knocked off from the network, and suddenly they will see a loss of quality of 4G services. Now, what kind of plan is this? As an user, I feel breaking my head. I do not understand. If you really wanted to have a service which is going to be used only by a 5G user with a 5G phone, then might as well deploy a 5G network. Why are you deploying a 4G network and wasting your time and money? Does it not make sense? Do you understand the point here? So you will need a 5G device in order to stay in the BSNL's network when the network actually gets transitioned from 4G to 5G. Because without that standalone 4G, without that 5G phone, you will not be able to utilize or experience the 5G services of BSNL. Because, without that integrated 5G phone with both 4G and 5G capability, you will not be able to continue to keep using BSNL services, whether 4G or 5G, because standalone 4G users in that 700 megahertz band without 5G phone capability will be knocked off from their 700 megahertz band, which has a higher coverage, into the 2100 megahertz band, which has got a lower coverage, means they immediately will see loss of coverage. That's the problem with BSNL's plan. So BSNL, if you ask me, should now deploy 5G only. It does not make any sense for BSNL to go through the 4G path. If they really wanted to do 4G, then their only option, which was the right option, because the 800 megahertz spectrum band is lying vacant. You should have given 5 megahertz of spectrum to BSNL in 800 megahertz band. You should have given just 5 megahertz of spectrum. That would have been good enough. Let those affordable 4G users use the 800 megahertz spectrum, and in parallel deploy 5G network in the 700 megahertz band. I do not understand what is the problem in doing so. This spectrum is lying vacant anyway. Nobody took. In the last two auctions, this spectrum was not bought. Nobody bought. It remained there as it is. 2 times nobody bought the 800 megahertz spectrum. I do not understand what is the problem. Why you have to basically go roundabout and catch your hand and deploy 4G now and then move your network to 5G, and only for those users who will going to have a 5G phone and they will be using 4G services in your network. Why? By the time those devices will also change, it's a completely waste of money. I do not understand why we are doing so. It is so pathetic. Anyway, friends, I'm not going to go further than this. I'm really feel pained about this strategy, and I hope that you have understood that why BSNL's 4G services are not going to be useful for most of the consumers who would like to have an affordable devices, because without 5G phone, you cannot have a continuity in BSNL service as they migrate from 4G to 5G, because you are going to get knocked off from their 700 megahertz band. Will have to latch on to the higher frequency band because they do not have an alternate spectrum band. 900 megahertz is going to remain for GSM for a long time. Okay, thank you friends for your time. I'll come back to you with the next video and the new video next time. Thank you very much.